Perfect. All right. So myself, Kawan, Caitlin, Jayana, and Aaliyah we will be discussing chapter 10. Of course, chapter 10 focuses on the critical role of student involvement in tracking and reflecting on their own learning. Rather than positioning students as passive recipients of instruction, this chapter emphasizes their role as active participants in the assessment process. When students collect evidence of their learning, through tracking systems, journals, and portfolios, they begin to develop deeper awareness of their progress, strengths, and areas of growth. A central idea in this chapter is that learning occurs on two levels simultaneously. One being mastery of academic content, and then the development of self-regulation skills. While the first level is visible through assignments and assessments, the second level regulation is cultivated through reflection, goal setting, and monitoring progress. This metacognitive process allows students to take ownership of their learning, which is ultimately leads to greater independence and academic achievement. Research highlighted in the chapter reinforces this idea. For example, students who engaged in regular self-reflection on their learning strengths showed significance and higher achievement compared to those who did not reflect. Additionally, tracking progress helps students recognize the incremental growth, which increases motivation and persistence, similar to how progress motivates players in video games. The chapter also introduces practical strategies teachers can use to support this process, including tracking systems for students' progress, learning journals and logs, or portfolios as evidence of growth. Ultimately, Chapter 10 argues that when students are taught to monitor, elevate, and reflect on their learning, they become more engaged, motivated, and capable learners. I also have Objective 1, create tracking systems for students used to record their assessment data. So, creating effective tracking systems is essential for helping students monitor their learning progress over time. These systems allow students to record assessment data in meaningful ways, helping them to connect their performance to specific learning targets. According to Chapter 10, tracking systems must be built on several key prerequisites. So, one of those being assessments must accurately reflect learning targets. Students must also understand what each assessment measures. Student must also understand the criteria for the quality of work, and then teachers must monitor progress and provide support when needed. Once these conditions are met, teachers can implement various tracking methods. So I'm gonna go through a list really quickly. Types of tracking systems. So you have tracking by assignments, student for student record, assignment name, date, learning target, score, type, formative or summative, and then reflection, what I did well and what I need to improve on. This method helps students see patterns in their performance and connect specific tasks to learning outcomes. The second one would be tracking by learning target. Instead of focusing on individual assignments, students track progress towards specific skills or standards. They also reflect on the evidence of learning, strengths, areas of improvement, and then this approach emphasizes the mastery rather than the grades. Number three would be visual tracking systems. So students may make color progress charts, graph their scores over time, or mark mastery levels for examples like steps using stars. These visual systems make growth visible and motivating, helping students to recognize incremental improvement. Then you have number four, stars and stairs reflection method. So students may identify, for example, like the stars, what they did well, or like in our content area, it may be like your glows versus grows. And then you have like your stairs, what they may need to improve on next. So this structure promotes goal setting and continuous improvement. And then, of course, why tracking systems matter. Tracking systems support the mitigation, which is the thinking, about the thinking, student ownership of learning, motivation through visible progress, and then data informed reflection and goal setting. When students actively track their progress, they shift from asking, "What grade did I get?" to "What am I learning and how can I improve myself?"
Okay. I had objective 2, which is select the types of portfolio or portfolios best suited to your students' needs. And so I thought this was really great because I had just started a portfolio project with students today, which it was good to kind of think through things when I was reading this chapter. There's a lot of benefits of portfolios, and a portfolio is just a collection of the work that is assembled to tell a story. And I thought that was super important, and the chapter emphasized that it didn't need to just be random pieces of paper put in a folder, but that it really needed to have like a beginning, middle, and end, and really show whatever you're trying to show. And so there are different types of portfolios, and so the celebration portfolio, the growth portfolio, the project portfolio, and the achievement status portfolio. So the celebration portfolio is to showcase best work or something that a student is really, really proud of. And this one is heavily based in student choice. So they get to pick what they really think is their best or something that they worked really hard on. I think this one to me has the most reflection to it because students are really thinking about the work that they've done and also how it made them feel. So I think that's kind of an important piece about celebration portfolios. There also was a graphic in the chapter that said, what the learning target, who should pick those, the kinds of entries and how many, the artifacts, and the kinds of annotations. And so for the celebration portfolio, the student or the student and the teacher could pick the learning targets that they want to highlight. The student picks the number and kind of entries and also the artifacts, and the kinds of annotations could be the student or the student in collaboration with the teacher, which I thought was interesting. The growth portfolio is meant to show progress towards one or more learning targets, and that kind of is like snapshots of each piece of the puzzle. So at the beginning, the middle piece, and at the end, what they've learned, and it should hopefully show growth and improvement and mastery of standards. And so for a growth portfolio, the teacher or the teacher in collaboration with the student can pick the learning targets. They can also pick the number and kind of entries that are included in the portfolio. They can also pick the artifacts, or the student itself could pick the artifacts, or the teacher in collaboration with the student could pick the types of annotations. And then the project portfolio, which is what I just started in my class today, is basically documenting steps of a project that's conducted over a period of time. And so it could be, a couple of days to a full year or like a multi-year process. And so for the project, purpose of it is to document, the project's trajectory, and then basically all of the drafts of the project or the steps of the project make it into this portfolio. And for this type of portfolio, the teacher really picks the learning targets because obviously they're kind of targeting that for the project itself. And the teacher may have requirements for that for the number of entries or types of entries, but the student could also help choose those. Same thing with how many artifacts and the kind of annotations on those. And then the achievement portfolio is kind of the last kind, and it's to demonstrate achievement with respect to one or more learning targets. And the work samples kind of are like your highest, your best of your best. And sorry, I lost my place. The teacher is kind of more in control, but the student does get some say in this type of portfolio as far as the number of entries and the type of entries and the artifacts. And so, what I thought was really interesting about the portfolios, I'm not sure how things are in y'all's counties, but it mentioned somewhere in the chapter about like putting just pieces in from like kindergarten, first grade, second grade, where they had this big folder and it was like a big file of all this information that really had no place and didn't kind of work together. Um, and so our county has done that, like in their cume folder, that kind of moves with them through the schools. They have like samples of writing from elementary school and stuff like that. But I think if I am hearing correctly, they're kind of doing away with that, and not having that anymore. So I thought that was interesting that the chapter kind of discouraged like that, because it is kind of cool for like parents to see like, oh, this is my little baby's kindergarten words or whatever, but it really doesn't show the true like assessment when you're looking at that, because each teacher is kind of looking for different things. So I think in theory it's a good idea, but I feel like all the teachers in the county would have to work together to make sure that like what they're trying to assess and show is kind of consistent throughout and not just random pieces of paper that the teacher put in um, the cume folder and selected. I think having student choice is important for portfolios. So we kind of have two separate things at our school. We have student led conferences in the fall or like early winter. And the teachers kind of help guide students as to what to pick, as far as like you need to have three artifacts from this semester, but they get to choose which ones go in. And so I was trying to kind of figure out if these student led conferences kind of work with a specific type of portfolio and have that focus. And I feel like out of the options, it's more achievement side, so more like the best of what they've done and what they've learned and mastered. But then at the end of the year, we have an event called Reflections, and it basically is not like a student like conference, but it's like a group collaborative portfolio that's like kind of like a 3D museum. And I feel like that's more of a celebration of the reflection. So I thought that was interesting, when I was looking at that and thinking about it in relation to our school.
That's good.
Yeah, hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I had objective three prepares to reflect on their learning process. So having students reflect on their learning process periodically is a great way to help them develop a clear sense of themselves as learners. You can have them reflect by writing or talking about their portfolio evidence and what it says to and about them. So, a good way to collect this evidence is using student records, notes, journals, logs, or having a collection of artifacts assembled into a portfolio. So, offering prompts is a great way to help the students reflect on what they have learned and how they have learned it and who they are as learners. I know in the book it had a chart on great with good prompt starters to help them for each portfolio. So at times it can be difficult for students to self-reflect accurately and constructively, especially when they first start self-reflecting. So this is risky for those students who have a history of academic failure because some self-reflecting students can go and will go certain lengths to maintain a positive internal sense of academic ability, even to the point they are denying or being unable to see, let alone face the flaws in their work. So it's important to maintain guided practice in a safe environment with your students. As teachers, we can help establish that safe environment by modeling the process, maybe by first considering, analyzing, and reflecting on some of our own work in front of class, or considering having the class collaborate in teams to compose a hypothetical self reflection on a collection of evidence. Doing those things help our students know that it is a safe place to reflect. So, reflecting does not have to be periodically. It can be daily, weekly, monthly, or a year long, allowing students the opportunity to reflect as much as possible, gives them the opportunity to expand on what they are learning, but allows them the chance to reflect on what they are, where they are in their learning process.
Yeah, I think that's really good. Our um our school, like I said, we have a whole event called Reflections, and they do like each grade level creates exhibits for the year, but it's kind of like a joke, not joke, that like they're like, okay, we're gonna reflect now, and they're like, oh my gosh. And like even when I was a student there, their big thing was reflecting on sticky notes. We're a little more technologically advanced now, but our principal would come out and we'd have assembly every day, and she would be like, okay, we're gonna reflect on this, and we'd hand out the sticky notes, and we're like, oh, we really don't want to do this, but I do think it's very valuable. And so I think the more you do it, like you said, it's not as scary, and that can kind of help get them into the practice of it, so that like even when we go on field trips afterwards, we reflect on our field trip, or a college visit. We reflect on like, okay, was that the school for you? Did you like it? Did you not like it? What things did you like? So that, 10 years, not 10 years, but like 5 years later when you're applying to school, because our school's a 5-year high school, you can remember like, oh, I didn't really like that campus, or I did really like that campus. And so it can help you further on. So I think that's important to teach them early on, and it can help them with their portfolios.
Yes, it is.
And then I think, Kwan, do you have a reflection one?
Yes, I'm sorry. I have I have reflection one.
You're good.
Most one of the most impactful ideas from this chapter is the importance of students' ownership and the learning process. Traditionally, assessment has been something done to students rather than with them. However, this chapter challenges that the mindset by showing how powerful it is when students are actively involved in tracking and reflecting on their progress. What stands out the most is how tracking systems and reflection practices build a metacognitive skill. When students regularly evaluate their strengths and weaknesses, they begin to understand how they learn the best. This not only improves academic performance, but it also prepares them for a lifelong learning. Another key takeaway is the connection between the motivation and the visible progress. When students can clearly see their growth, whether through charts, graphs, or portfolios, they are more likely to stay engaged and persist through challenges. This aligns closely with real world experiences where progress and feedback drive continued effort. Of course, as an educator, this chapter reinforces the importance of creating a classroom environment where students are encouraged to reflect on their learning regularly, set personal goals, take responsibility for their progress. And then, of course, in my own teaching practice, especially within family consumer sciences, I can apply these concepts by incorporating student tracking sheets for project, and skills, reflection prompts after assignments, and then portfolio based assessments to show growth over time. And then overall, chapter 10 highlights that assessment is not just about measuring learning, it is about improving it. By empowering students to track and reflect on their own learning, we help them become more confident, independent, and successful learners. And just to harp on the part where it was mentioning the reflection prompts and portfolio based assessments to show growth over time. So we strangely, I can say, we put everything kind of like together. There's no like specific system as far as like, okay, let's show. I feel like it's done in an odd way, but an interesting way. So like for example, we had our um, multicultural and curriculum night. Usually, of course, we do two separate events for both of them, but they combined them this year. So it was student led, and they had students, for like myself, all of the other CTE classes, and just different classes, like really applying what they have learned. So for example, if it was just something as simple as, showing them how to work the sewing machine and showing them that you can trace without using the actual tracing paper and using fabric. Like those things were like really big takeaways because I be thinking that they really don't be paying attention, but they do be paying attention. So I was really like impressed during that time frame just to kind of see them like working and moving and just showcasing their parents what it is that they're actually learning within inside of each of our classes. So that was really good.
Yeah, and they want to like show their parents what they learned. They want to
Hmm.
be proud of their work. So I think
Hmm.
even like the from pre-K for Gianna to like my kids who are 18, 19 years
Hmm.
old that like they do want to really like I don't know, have something like have an avenue to talk to their
Hmm.
parents. But
Hmm.
So I had the next, how does this chapter align with or challenge your own beliefs about teaching and learning? And I say it aligns with my beliefs that students should have portfolios and evidence of their learning to reflect on. So I believe it's important for students to collect and reflect on their learning. I feel that it helps them stay on track and pinpoint exactly what is needed of them. So when I think about my pre-K students that I have now, they currently have portfolio sections that we just use for the whole year that we started in the beginning, which contains some of their work, some of their assessments, and it allows the parents and us as the teachers to see where they started and where they are now. So it's a good visual to help them. And then when I look back on my own personal journey, going through middle and high school, taking family consumer sciences classes, I had a portfolio of my work, and it was kind of a combination of celebration, growth charts, projects, achievements, journals and reflections, and work samples put into one space. And I feel it kept me grounded and made me more aware of who I was as a learner. It allowed me to stay on track of things, keep updated, and see my progress grow throughout the years. And even as I advanced on into my collegiate years as a freshman in college, I was required to create and maintain a digital portfolio, adding to it as I matriculated through my 4 years of undergrad. And I still update it now as a grad student. So I feel like portfolios are really needed, even though sometimes they push against them. It really allows students to see everything in one spot and keep up with where they are as a learner and how much they grown. So overall, this chapter really aligned with my beliefs about teaching and learning when it comes to students collecting and reflecting on evidence of their learning.
That's good.
that's cool that you're still updating that. That's awesome.
Mhm. Reflection number 3 is, which strategy or idea from this chapter would you feel most confident implementing and why? I would feel most confident in in using portfolios because it not only allows me, but students to review their work over the course of the class. There are stories behind grades, and students will reflect on their growth areas. I would prefer to use physical portfolios versus digital ones because I tend to use physical paper copy activities this year due to lack of technology, aka less Chromebooks. So project portfolios will be very beneficial because we do a lot of projects in the future. I would like to create a huge portfolio project for eighth graders, showcasing their work from each year leading up until they graduate middle school. It's also a great way for parents to see an overview of um, all their work, um, their school, I'm sorry, the scholar has completed in facts class.
And I had reflection number 4, which is what part of this chapter makes you feel uncertain, nervous, or hesitant about applying in practice. I like I said, I've started one today. So I've done this project. This is my third year teaching, so the third time, and it has taken different shapes and different I don't know, elements of it throughout the 3 years I've been doing this project. But I felt really good about it because I made my first rubrics for this project. I had never done that before, so I did that. And so I think that like what makes me nervous about this chapter is just trying to put maybe this portfolio piece in their whole year of their last year of high school rather than just this particular project portfolio. Um, I'm not necessarily like uncertain about doing it. I think it would be good. I just don't exactly know how I would put those pieces together with their college applications and financial aid. Like some of it's not super interesting, like the things that we're doing that we have to get done. So I think that's the part that I'm like hesitant about. But I do think it would be cool to see like where they start and where they end. And hopefully, as I kind of think about that more, I can also talk with the seminar teachers in the other grades because we have one per grade level. And so starting something maybe in the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, and then my year like that we can consistently like add to that's more of a portfolio, maybe like something that really students like Jana said like hold on to and continue on as they go off to college or job or wherever they end up going. So I think just trying to figure that out for more pieces than just this project portfolio.
Right. So to close us out, this chapter discusses the outcomes of student abilities of being independent, such as tracking their progress, writing in dialogue journals, and learning logs. Also accumulating evidence in portfolios, for example, celebration, growth, project, and achievement portfolios. Students also annotating, commenting on their work always allows for an honest, raw view of their efforts. Grades and portfolios have different users and uses. Both can evaluate learning levels. Teachers need to interact with students to fully see results from all of these individual processes. Learning starts with stories, and students have to go through their own stories to be able to find their way to the next one. Thank you.
That's good.